What if everything you've been taught about religion is only part of the truth? Have you ever wondered why so many different religions exist, yet all seem to talk about similar ideas like the soul, purpose, and life after death? If they are different, why do they feel so connected? And if they are connected, what does that mean for what you believe? Could it be that religion is not about choosing one path, but understanding something deeper behind all of them? Before you accept or reject any belief, maybe it's time to question what you've never truly explored. What if everything you believe about religion is only part of a much bigger picture? Not wrong, but incomplete. And what if the missing part is not something outside of you, but something you've felt before, quietly, in moments you never fully understood? In today's discussion, inspired by the ideas and perspectives associated with Dr. Brian Weiss, we're not looking at religion as rules, labels, or divisions. Instead, we're exploring it as a human experience, something that goes beyond traditions and reaches into something deeper, something more personal. Because no matter where you are in the world or what you've been taught, religion has always played a role in shaping how people understand life, purpose, and what comes after. It gives structure, meaning, and guidance. But at the same time, it also raises questions. And maybe that's where the real conversation begins. Think about it for a moment. Across different cultures and histories, there are thousands of beliefs, each claiming to explain the same big questions. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What happens after we die? Different answers, different stories, but strangely very similar themes. Ideas of a soul, a journey, a purpose, a continuation beyond this life. So here's the question. If these beliefs are so different on the surface, why do they feel so similar underneath? Is it coincidence? Or is there something deeper that connects them all? Some would say religion is simply created by humans, a way to bring order to uncertainty, a way to deal with fear of the unknown. And from a logical perspective, that explanation makes sense. But then there are experiences that don't fit neatly into that explanation. Moments where people feel something beyond logic, a deep sense of connection, a feeling of peace that seems to come from nowhere, a knowing without evidence. And these experiences are not limited to one religion. They happen everywhere, to different people, in different ways. And yet, they often lead to the same kind of realization, that there is something more. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that one belief is right and another is wrong. In fact, it might suggest something completely different. What if religion is not about being right, but about pointing towards something? Something that cannot be fully explained with words, something that can only be experienced. Because when you look beyond the surface, the rituals, the traditions, the differences, you start to notice something interesting. The core message is often the same. Be kind. Be aware. Grow. Understand. These are not just religious ideas. They are human ones. And maybe that's the point. Now let's take this a step further. What if the differences in religion are not contradictions, but interpretations? Different ways of describing the same underlying reality, like looking at the same object from different angles. Each perspective looks unique, but the object itself remains the same. If that's true, then the question changes. It's no longer which religion is correct. It becomes, what are they all trying to show? And that question opens the door to something much deeper. Because instead of focusing on division, you begin to look for connection. Instead of arguing over differences, you begin to explore similarities. And in that process, something shifts. Your understanding becomes less rigid, more open, more curious. Now think about your own experience. Have you ever had a moment that felt bigger than you? A moment where everything seemed to make sense, even if you couldn't explain why? Maybe it happened in silence, or in nature, or during a time when you were deeply focused or emotional. Whatever it was, it felt real. And more importantly, it stayed with you. Those moments are interesting because they don't belong to any specific religion. They are personal, direct, and often they feel more powerful than anything you've been told. So what do we do with that? Do we ignore it? Or do we explore it? Because if those experiences are meaningful, then they might be pointing to something that goes beyond labels. Something that exists, whether we define it or not. Now, this is where the perspective associated with Dr. Brian Weiss becomes especially interesting. Instead of focusing only on beliefs, it encourages exploration of personal experience. What you feel, what you notice, what you become aware of. Not to replace religion, but to understand it differently. To see it not as a fixed system, but as a doorway into deeper awareness. And once you start seeing it that way, everything changes. Religion is no longer something external that you follow. It becomes something internal that you explore. And that shift can be powerful, because it puts the focus back on you. Your awareness, your growth, your understanding. Now let's pause again. Because this isn't about telling you what to believe. It's about inviting you to question, to reflect, to think beyond what you've always accepted as given. Because the truth is no single explanation has all the answers. And maybe it's not supposed to. Maybe the purpose is not to find a final conclusion, but to continue exploring. To stay curious, to remain open. Because when you do that, you start to notice things you didn't see before. Connections, patterns, ideas that once seemed separate suddenly feel related. And in that space, something interesting happens. You begin to understand that the search itself has value, that the act of questioning is part of the journey. So instead of asking which religion is right, you might start asking, what can I learn from all of them? And that question leads to growth, understanding, and perhaps a deeper sense of peace. Because when you move beyond rigid thinking, you create space. Space for new ideas. Space for awareness. Space for something more. And maybe that something more is what people have been trying to describe all along. Not perfectly, not completely, but sincerely. So as you think about religion, don't just see it as a system. See it as a starting point, a way of asking questions that don't always have simple answers. And maybe that's exactly what makes it valuable, because it keeps the conversation going. It keeps the curiosity alive. And in a world where so many things feel certain, that curiosity might be one of the most important things we have. So the next time you think about religion, don't just accept it or reject it. Pause. Look deeper and ask yourself, what if there's more to this than I've been told? Because maybe you're not meant to follow one path blindly. Maybe you're meant to understand the journey itself. And perhaps that's where the real meaning begins.